right, good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Ancharski, and I'd like to welcome you to another Blue Lava Community virtual meetup. Get ready for another great monthly session built with, by, and for the community. Big thanks to all of our returning members for joining again this month, and for all of your support, of course, and to all those attending for the very first time. Now, this month's topic is Building Security Warriors, How to Lead Teams Without Dropping the Ball. Before we get started, a few quick reminders. As always, we'd love to see your questions and perspectives shared in the chat or by raising your hand throughout the session. Laz is on the screen to help respond and get to as many as we can throughout the meeting, so definitely don't be shy. And feel free to turn on your camera as well, as this is meeting format for the first time this month as opposed to webinar. You can also log back into the community portal to continue today's conversation. Check out all the new contributions after today's event by visiting community.bluelava.io. And of course, when you sign off, please share your feedback in the very short survey that'll pop up. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to today's meeting leader. He is the global CIO and CISO at GetAround. I'd like to welcome and pass it over to Mr. Mel Reyes to kick it off. Thanks, Mel.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for showing up today, and hopefully the title does not steer from what I'll be presenting. First, I want to show an appreciation for everybody who's here, because as practitioners, we're probably all swamped with whether it's you're in digital forensics or rolling out some program or having to follow up with developers on some remediation or configuration set of issues. So thank you for showing up. I do want to get a little bit of an umbrella over all of this. If you're here to get technical details on how to implement something from a security standpoint, just bail out now, because it's not going to happen. But what I will say is a lot of what I cover are through quite a few years of trial and error and being near field to some great leaders, as well as being near some very toxic leaders on what not to do. So with that, I pull together 5 key categories that I've been presenting on for a little while now, and I pulled them all together. And they're not just high-level conversations. They're really about actual tactics, actual books, actual things that you can use or you can do. The biggest portion of this is going to be the realization, if you haven't already, which I'm sure a lot of the folks who are on this call have, realization that you first have to recalibrate what you're doing and how you do it in order for you to be an effective leader. Now, an effective leader, you don't have to have people reporting into you in order to be an effective leader, right? It could be a colleague, it could be a cohort, it could be somebody else. So when I talk about leadership, it's not about having a job where you have people reporting into you. It's about demonstrating the qualities that you really want to push out there. So a lot of what I talk about here, it really is the ability to be able to be vulnerable, the ability to be able to be focused at a higher level. And most of it is by being selfish, right? You have to take care of yourself and understand yourself, what you're looking at, and then how to apply that to your teams, to your colleagues, to your world. Building trust, communicating, adjusting focus, leadership, and enable learning. These are the 5 key categories that I've seen as an individual contributor, or as a team lead, or as a global leader that I've seen. Most of us don't take care of for ourselves, and most of us don't know how to take care of for our teams. So I'm just going to go dive right in and give you a little background about me. I've worked in IT roles for quite a while. I've grown different portfolios in different businesses. I've gone through a bunch of excellent companies, and I've been working as an advisor and everything else through a lot of my efforts. Now, some of you are like, okay, well, that's pretty impressive. Maybe like 2 or 3 of you. The rest of you are like, wow, this guy sounds like he's full of shit, and he's got a lot of bullshit that he's throwing at us. You're right. So now, what if I showed you this picture, and I said, my first job was at the public library, and at the same time, I worked at Burger King and then moved over to McDonald's in order for me to afford my first computer. What if I said my first project in high school was building a nuclear reactor simulator, Then I said I was first generation to go to college and thought I wanted to be an accountant. Which one of these two realms builds trust faster and better, right? Part of the ability for us to be able to create relationships, not just outside of work, in work, or otherwise, is to be vulnerable and to share part of your life, part of who you are, right? The first half is just a bullshit resume that you find on LinkedIn or some, accomplishments-based resume that you want to throw out there. That's cute, right? But if you're building a team and you're building relationships, what you really have to do is be truthful to yourself, kind of be relatable, and really show to folks that you care. Big topics that will be going over and over and over again throughout this whole session. So now let's go into, and I'm also do nonprofit work as an advisor and a mentor because I care. Okay, so now let's go through a potential exercise that you can go through, which I've seen done quite a few times, right? Just taking a quadrant-based piece. I'm interested in photography. That's a picture that I took in Puerto Rico. I'm interested in reading. One of the latest books that I'm reading is Smarter, right? Which is actually a pretty darn good book in comparison to a lot of the other books I'm learning that I've done. My anchoring movie in life is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, because I always felt like I was that kid who's looking for that golden ticket. And my dream car is a Maserati Gran Turismo convertible, right? If I took this slide and I introduced myself to you or to a team or to anybody else, you get a lot more personal information here than you would if I gave you the resume spiel. This is one exercise I've done with other companies that kind of work with us. And this is how you can just present yourself to your team. And then you can have your team do this exercise, once a week or once, during your meetings, so that you can get to learn a little bit more about them and the team can ask questions. This is one of those tactical pieces that I love to do. Now, I take that one step further. I have nonprofits that I reach out to, and I try to motivate them to give them a little bit of an idea. So I typically have the previous slide, but then I go into this next slide. This next slide is one that I actually present. I've presented it over the last 4 years, at least 20 or 30 times. And it's really to talk about me, right? I was born in Puerto Rico. As a kid, we moved to New York. I had hair, right? As you can see through these pictures. I hated school. I got into college and I did exactly what you would do in college, buy eating contests. I love photography. I love to motivate myself through the vision of where I want to be and kind of what I wanted to do. And this is part of a plan that I had 4 years ago, which I executed on. This is my family in California, where I wanted to move them to, and we did 3 years ago. I love reading. This is a picture that I took at Venice Beach 4 years ago that I use as wallpaper to inspire me of where I wanted to be. I love building teams. This is from one of my teams that I work with. For Halloween, they dressed up like me. They put goatees on and hats, right? And I love to have fun. The Guy Fieri hat down at Long Beach actually at Venice Beach was just a must-have for me to wear. You get a lot more personal information out of this, and to me, showing that I'm vulnerable and explaining the things that I'm interested in are much more important than for me to start going through all kinds of DFR, just all kinds of other wonderful technical things. We can go through, all of the accreditations and all the certifications, but this to me built a better relationship, because then it starts conversations and it really showcases to people, yes, I am family centric because that's why they're in the middle, but I also have a lot of other characteristics that I love to demonstrate to folks. Building trust, and this is where I want everybody to focus on. It does mean, yes, you may have to share a little bit more, ask a little bit more, but the most important thing is you have to care a little bit more about the people on your team, right? Remember that it's so-and-so's, their kid's birthday, or, things like that. Celebrate those and enable the teams that you have to be able to share, as well as to be respectful. And thank you, Laz and Chris, for rescheduling this call, to be respectful of the events that come up. My daughter had her graduation on Thursday morning that this was originally scheduled for, and I was torn to bits. I'm like, crap, can I make this call and be present and available for her high school graduation? I couldn't, so we rescheduled it. Building trust, obviously, you Captain Obvious with a lot of these things, but and a lot of you are gonna be like, Mel, I already do this shit. What are you talking about? Do it more, do it purposefully. And this is how you're going to be able to kind of pull through. It'll increase your credibility, hopefully, depending on how you deliver it and the trust that people have in you. You demonstrate it every day, right? You practice openness. You speak at a level that isn't hyperbole, high speech, or otherwise, right? You don't start talking about compliance and all kinds of, you start talking about real things that are impacting the teams, right? And how you can motivate them on removing the obstacles that they have, pushing them through a lot of the anxiety that they may be experiencing, the stresses. Cybersecurity is probably one of the biggest leading causes of stress and some form of traumatic career change, right? We know it. There's just tons out there. There's tons of pressure. So we really have to kind of show up for ourselves and be truthful to ourselves, and then how to do that. The relationships we build, the collaboration, and how we talk should not be a formal dictatorship, right? It should be a collaborative piece. It should be about building the exercises that you want. Number one of the hardest things for people to do is define things to help them develop soft skills. So I've taken on with my teams to say, I want every month somebody on the team to put on a presentation about any topic they want, right? But it has to be a really good presentation, and it has to be stylish, and it has to be thought out. I've had folks on my team present on how to make the best hamburger. I've had folks on my team present on the foundational history of Wi-Fi, right? Does not have to be about cybersecurity or some risk or some compliance piece. It's about giving your team the ability to be able to showcase their soft skills, their presentation skills, and then giving them feedback on that, right? Something to grow and learn that they may not have exposure to. And this could be to just you, just the whole team, or it could be to the whole company, right? I presented something similar to this to 100 divisional CIO and CISOs 2 months ago, right? And every one of them was like, oh, I would say a majority of them was like, this is a great idea, because now you get to actually present one of two things. You can build trust by showcasing a skill or something that nobody knows about, or you can showcase your skills in your current security role by really educating everybody else. Team introductions. I love this. I love this. Anytime I go into a team or inherit a team or somebody comes onto my team, this is one of the best things that I love to do. So what you do is you every week, if you inheriting a team, you pick one person, or every day, one person will go through these questions, right? How'd you get into IT and security? And the rest of the team gets to vote if that's a good enough answer. And you're like, okay, typically the first two questions are easy. Then the next one, to know a little bit more about the person. You stay stranded on an island with a solar-powered MP3 player. What song, album, or artist would you be playing on that stranded island? And everybody pretty much thumbs that up. The next one is the one that really catches them all. Right? Tell us something about yourself that's embarrassing or shocking. This is where the rest of the team can vote down if it's not shocking enough, or if it's not interesting enough, or anything that's really, really relevant, and the team can have fun with it. You'd be surprised. These three questions alone start more conversations on a team about interests, about how people got started, and then about some event in their life that's shocking. I have had some folks where I've had to pull aside afterwards and say, you might not want to overshare that much to a larger audience. The fact that you may or may not have been incarcerated at some point, we may need to go to HR to talk about some of these things, but it's okay, because a lot of what folks share were really beautiful things. Meeting Bill Gates at a French restaurant, things that are really, really phenomenal, that you get to learn and start a conversation. Scavenger hunts, right? Whether it's physical, digital, or otherwise, right? We have a ton of different domains that we can actually work with people on, right? Whether it's physical, whether it's digital or otherwise, right? Capture the flag, all those kind of scenarios. Have fun with your teams once a month, once a quarter. Do something that really goes above and beyond the normal Call of Duty, because at the end of the day, you've got to build a team, and you've got to make it fun, and you've got to make it interesting. So if you've got a bunch of brainiacs in your realm, build out a cybersecurity Jeopardy game, right? And have a prize, give something, right? Really push the team to be collaborative, whether it's team-based Jeopardy or individual-based Jeopardy, and pull it together, right? Even if you've got 3 people on your team or 2 people or just one, have fun with it, and push through it. This presentation is going to be available afterwards, but I've included links. Conference call bingo or meeting bingo is phenomenal, where you put in different key areas. I ran meetings for like 120, 150 people at one point, and it was who knows how to scuba, who's scuba certified, who's done a hike in Kilimanjaro, and you have to go around and you have to ask people, right? In today's age, with mostly virtual, you can have a call bingo. Next time somebody says domain or says DFIR or talks about compliance or says ISO 27001, and you create these bingo cards and see who wins. Cultural Playbook is phenomenal. Has tons of different exercises that you can work with. Elevate Your Team is a phenomenal read. It's the author originally created Elevate, the book Elevate, which is about yourself and kind of how to push yourself into a new realm. The summary that he includes in Elevate Your Team includes that, plus how do you get your team out there and leading without authority, right? It's really, really fantastic books that I've read. I push everyone to build the trust and to create the culture that you need, because in cybersecurity, in IT, in any company, culture is it, right? You have to create that, a great place for people to work. I'll pause there, see if there are any questions, Laz or Chris, before we jump in. I'm sure there's some folks who are like, well, this is obvious shit. That means you're a great leader or you're doing the right stuff. Other folks maybe have learned some stuff.
Hey, Mel. Yeah, first I want to say thank you for making the time to put this together and your thoughts. I'm wondering if don't keep the questions limited to Chris and I, right? I'm looking at the group that's here. If anybody has a question, I've seen a couple questions come off in the chat, but yeah, you guys, this is an opportunity I see Elizabeth. Can you share the links in the chat, please? Okay. Hi, Elizabeth.
So I'm going to be sharing this whole deck on right after this. And then in here, there's about 5 or 6 pages of links for resources.
Cool. Yeah. So Elizabeth, everything will be posted up in the community platform.
So Mel, maybe I have one more suggestion for you. Maybe you can include a fake celebrity contest. So I think you would be a better Guy Fieri, better looking Guy Fieri based on the picture.
Thank you, thank you, Thiru. Yes, have fun with it. That's the whole point. You're absolutely right. Right? Be creative. It could be show up as your celebrity to the next call. Right? I've seen pajama parties. I've seen costume parties in the middle of the year. It doesn't have to be Halloween. Right? Show up. Dressed as show up with a tux. Right? Just as long as you're having fun. And I think that's part of how you develop a team. That the cultural playbook, I will tell you right now, if you're stuck and you're like, I don't have time to research what to do, get the cultural playbook. Literally just open it and stick your finger on something and guaranteed it's going to have a great idea on how to just build something fun. Now, it may have to be adapted to be virtual or otherwise, but really, really creative ideas in that cultural playbook.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. I feel like Thiru's a ringer. He's a great colleague of mine. Thank you. I appreciate it, though. Thank you. All right. So again, everyone, please. I can't flip easily between the chat or the presentation. So chime in, throw out your questions. I'd love to be able to help. Now, I wanted to have a little bit of a reality check. The reality is we are probably overstressed, overtaxed, overworked, under-resourced, under-budgeted. We don't have the right tools. We need to port over gigs of data. We need to sift through gives. We have to, we've been mandated to not only be defensive, but we need to be offensive and we need to be proactive. The insanity of cybersecurity is quite the challenge. Well, reality check is exposure is global. I don't care who you are, what your map is. Oh, we only have folks in here and this office is, oh, guess what? No, you've got logins, you've got connections, you've got people who are traveling outside of policy. So our exposure across every company that you're working in now is global. So you have to keep that in mind. The reality check is we've got zettabytes and zettabytes and just insane amount of data being generated, curated, analyzed or otherwise. It's a real world issue in cybersecurity. How do you pull all of this stuff together to get the tangible information that you need on the security issues that you're looking for? We're inundated with the different dashboards and the different tools. We're constantly being thrown all kinds of numbers on the impact of cybersecurity incidents and events and malware, everything else. We are constantly trying to manage how many tools and what the sprawl is in our organization. And then, we talk about what I like to look at the history and the product development cycle over the last 2 decades, right? We've got a lot of MVP efforts early on. We've got official product launches in the early 2000s, and we've got enterprise and global execution. What am I talking about? CVEs. This is the number of CVEs as of a month or 2 ago that have been published, right? So and it literally has this model, right? MVP. These were script kiddies and all the bullshit viruses that we dealt with, right? Early 2000s, we had some pretty well structured attacks, right? In the last 5+ years, we've had global nation state threats. So our job is constantly having to learn, having to analyze, having to block and detect and kind of educate an organization, right? All of it is real. This is real. I pull these numbers and I haven't updated it in about a month or so, but these are real numbers. And guess what? This is estimated to go up even more by the end of this year to at least 20 to 25% more than last year. So know your audience. Why did I present all of these wonderful slides on what our current state of cybersecurity or SaaS management or CVEs? Because this audience is a cybersecurity audience. I created a tone, I created a visual, I created things that some of you or all of you should relate to, right? This is what I talk about when I say communications, right? When we're trying to communicate, this audience is highly technical, has a ton of experience across the global realms. Some or all of the facts or slides that I presented are relatable. Now, I needed to make sure that I had everybody on this call be cybersecurity experts or practitioners in order for me to put those slides together, but I would not present those or some of those to executive leaders or to the board or otherwise. And I would probably pull back on the level of anxiety that I would have explaining the pressures that we have or anything else, right? I would make sure that I am following the audience and understanding with them. So if I'm talking to the board or I'm talking to the CFO, it's more about dollars and cents and strategic efforts. If I'm talking to practitioners, guess what? I'm going in deep on everything I can with all of the leadership or management level pieces. I can go even deeper about the new tools that we've integrated and all of the syslog integrations and the beautiful analysis that we're getting across some of the AI tools in order to do detection. I can do all of that, but I wanted to keep a light tone of going over as many domains. That's the key to communications. You know, some folks, like a CFO, love quantitative metrics on dollars and cents. Our teams, maybe not so much, right? We don't need to have OKRs and KPI conversations at every weekly call, right? We want to talk about what's working, what's not working, and keep a natural language, but also really get into the brass tacks of things. You really want to get to know the size of the audience, the gender, the topic, and the issues, right? It's basic communication presentation skills. try to push yourself to really be thoughtful of that. Captain obvious things, but you would be surprised how many times I get on a call and it's supposed to be a technical overview and it's super, super high level. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by this? And how are you going to do that? Where are you going to remediate this? And, where are those logs to be stored? How much money did you, do we need in order to store those logs? And it doesn't get to that level. So now I'm going to kind of jump into, let me pause here. Any questions on the communication portion of this, right? How to target your audience?
I can go again, Mel.
All right.
So Mel, this is fantastic. So how do you switch? Like what are the skills or what do you have to do? Because this is a fantastic one. But for me, like for example, obviously subordinates, authority, that comes easily. I mean, obviously being a techie, it's easy for me to talk technically as a techie, but to level up, managing up or talking to people outside of your area. Like for example, I'm in the financial industry. If I have to talk to somebody in pharmaceutical about technology, like what kind of skills do I need to develop to be at that level?
Yeah. So number one, what I've found is you've got to put yourself near field to these folks, right? You've got to get into the conversations like a Blue Lava community and look at all the conversations that are being had, right? You've got some incredible thought leader in the Blue Lava community. You've got incredible thought leaders in a lot of other areas. Read the tone, read what they're pitching, read the sites, read the blogs that they're posting, and start to get into the understanding of the language and how you can get to that. That's number one. Number two is what tactically needs to be summarized strategically, right? So you have to develop the universal translator of, how do you take, access management and IAM and all these other topics and kind of put them in English speak. I'll give you a primary example. You and I meet and you ask me, what do I do? And I literally used this a week or two ago. I say, I heard the cats in IT and security. That's all I say, right? I don't start talking about rolling out an ISO 27001 program and da-da-da-da-da, right? And then when they ask, they're like, oh, what do you mean by that? I'm like, well, I manage the IT and security systems for a global company. Then they may ask me a technical question, or they may ask me a financial question, or they may ask me another question. Oh, what kind of security do you work with? Well, I've been rolling out ISO 27001. We've got SOC and a bunch of other things that we need to take into consideration. And then they are the ones who drive the conversation for you, but you keep it at a very high level, as if you're on the soccer field and to the left of you is some dude, and to the right of you is an 80-year-old lady. The same intro and same conversation. Then you work your way into the technical. So you have to start at the top. How would you explain what you do to a board member, and then have that board member walk you through what they're interested in? Well, how are we managing risk? Well, we've got each of the domains have controls. Our key systems, we have one deficit. And then if they get into the details, you get into the details. But that's part of knowing your audience. And what you do is you have to get as much exposure, CDEs, training courses online as you can. And you're like, Mel, what the hell? You're making me do more work? Absolutely. Absolutely. All day, every day, you have to push yourself to get out there, get exposed, and really learn as much as you can. That means you've got a time block. That means there's certain things throughout the day that you need to do for work, but then you may need to do for yourself. I was 16 years old when I read whatever edition it was of What Color Is Your Parachute? And one thing that stuck out in that book was, if you're not spending 30 to 60 minutes a day towards your career, your advancement, your job search, or anything else, you'll never get anywhere. And Thera, you know this very much, as well as a lot of other folks on this call. Every day, I have to do something that either helps somebody or helps me learn, right? And that's how I stay ahead of trying to be what I need to do. So with that, let me pause and see if that helped, and to see if there are any other questions. Yes, thank you, Phil. Yeah, and it really does come down to knowing your audience, right? So it's It's really important, right? We can get into trace routes and Wireshark, and we can get into all of that, but do we need to? How do we get through what we need to do? All right, so let's go to the next slide. I'll keep monitoring the chat. Adjusting focus is something that I'm really want to make sure everybody understands, because this is where the reality check comes into place for yourself and then for your team. Having gone through a ton of introspective moments in the last decade, right? Why am I in this job? Why am I dealing with this toxic leader? Why is it that I can't present something well to get the buy-in or to get the budgets, right? The last decade or two have been a real true learning experience, a lot of adjustment for my approach and how I look at things. And the first thing that I wanted to showcase is you have to know yourself. You have to know where you are, what you're doing, and what you want to do, right? What's your superpower? And yes, Ed, by the way, I'm just looking at Toastmasters is phenomenal. So what do you do that falls into this Zen diagram, right? This is Ikigai, or as I like to call it, Zen bliss. What is it that you do on a day-to-day basis? Is your job closer to one side or the other? Are your activities afterwards on one side or another, right? This is where I have been blessed in the last, I would say, this was about 6, 7, maybe 8 months ago, to be able to find one of the first true Ikigai moments in my career. And what does that mean? Well, I have a passion, or I have an idea, I have all these other wonderful realms, right? Something I get paid for, something the world needs, something that I love and something that I'm good at. Well, I needed a compliance team for my current org to be able to get through ISO 27001. I happen to be working with a nonprofit that is training compliance teams for ISO 27001, GRC, and a bunch of other things. I was actually supposed to be in Michigan today for their last presentations and graduations, but flight delays and a bunch of other things. So I actually would have been able to present and actually showcase this team to everyone, but we were able to actually hire the nonprofit to work on our program. That, in hiring them, funded the cohort in Michigan. So it's a nonprofit to help educate cybersecurity and GRC, a passion of mine, something I love to do, which is build teams and help. Something that the world needs is to educate and get another 15 folks, elevated in their careers into the cybersecurity industry. And it's something I get paid for, to manage this team and manage these efforts. So in reality, I almost brought myself to tears once the contract was signed, and I realized that I was helping a whole cohort as part of another WebCat program that the Gracie org, grcie.org, was helping out. It was phenomenal, right? You're not going to get too many of those moments in life, but the closer you can try to push yourself and understand what your values and what your mission and what you're about. This is what I mean by adjusting focus, right? And that's what is important right now. Now, what is that? What are the things that you need to do? And this is the only slide you're going to see about empathy and everything else. And because it blew my mind in the last 3 to 4 years, how the empathy market, grew. And I was like, wait, you didn't care about your teams before? Wait, you didn't actually show emotions? Wait, you didn't share who you were? I get it. There's cultural components, there's work related pieces, but it really is, at the end of the day, just care about your team, care about the company, care about the impact that you're having, not only in the company, not only in your teammates, but everybody else outside of that. The ability to care is all you need, right? You don't need a formula for how to develop your empathy or otherwise. Just in every scenario, show you care. And then that will lead you to, like, well, if I care, I really should reach out to so-and-so because I kind of felt like they were off a little bit today and they may not be doing well. It's additional work. It's additional forethought. It can be exhausting, but you have to be able to show up and care. Everyone, including my 15-hour stint at Delta yesterday, goes through personal struggles. Right? You have to be mindful of that. If you kick off a conversation excuse me, a conversation or a team meeting with like, all right, what's on the agenda? What do we need to solve today? Guess what? You may be leaning towards being an ass, right? First question you should ask your team is, how's everybody doing? Anybody have good news or anybody have anything, right? What are the wins from yesterday? What are the wins from last week, right? Talk about the positive, talk about the great things, anybody dealing with anything that we we need to, postpone this call. You can get into OKRs, KPIs, metrics, deliverables, and everything else in a Gantt chart, any other time, but you really have to make sure you have a feeling for where your team is at, right? Did they just pull an all-nighter to try to get you a report or some, remediation, or try to, get through some compliance piece, right? Champion that, help them out, work with them on being able to say, don't show up to this meeting, go take a nap, right? Like, be really, really respectful of the fact that we are both human, but also professionals. Overwhelming workload. I can't say that enough, right? That you're going to be called on in the middle of the night, and the weekends, or otherwise to deal with or answer something. You cannot be there all of the time. You have to set your boundaries. You have to make sure you enable your teams, your colleagues, or others to set their boundaries. You have to make sure you set your time blocking to say between 6 and 8 every night, no one can talk to me because that's the time I spend with my kids. That's the time. I don't care if the house is on fire or the building's on fire. Find somebody else, because I need to spend time with my kids because of the toxicity. Now, between 8 and 2 in the morning, I may be, or 3 or 4 in the morning, I may be doing all kinds of work, but I need to at least have a slice of life where I'm spending with my family or otherwise. We have to, and this will be in a whole other section, but we have to not only educate ourselves, but we have to educate our teams, and we have to find the avenues to do that. So I'm going to get a little bit deeper into this because if you don't feel like you're learning and your brain is draining out of your ear in your current role, you're going to want to leave, right? And the people on your team are going to want to leave. So you got to expose them to different systems, different pieces that they're not currently managing, right? So I have a session on Fridays, which last few Fridays have been hard to keep, but I call it KT and the Sunshine Band, knowledge transfer. What do I know that the rest of the team needs to know? How do I give them access to, tools or other things that they need from an auditor or viewer standpoint, so they can see the exposure of what we're working on with the different tools, right? So you don't have to have a formal training budget, and you don't have to have all kinds of other certifications, but also guide them towards that, right? Is it Network Plus, Security Plus, CISSP, or otherwise? Help them out with the domains by exposing them to those domains if that's not in your job title. Really, really critical for you to be able to be the person that enables the learning. Leadership. Let me pause there because this is the next section. So any questions on adjusting focus? Because I do feel that that's the most introspective, and the one that, because we're so technical and so security minded, that we kind of always sometimes forget. All right. I'm gonna move along. And by the way, so a lot of these images that you see here on these slides are actual pictures that I took. I may have put an effect on them to soften them up. But these are actual pictures that I took, and I took about 10 quotes over the last, this was about 3 years ago, about 10 quotes that I've added to them. This picture here is me at the top of the Santa Monica mountain range in Calabasas, California, taking a picture with the sun behind me. Now, behind me, I could see the whole valley. I could see some traffic, but also beautiful houses, and then just beautiful mountain ranges, right? This was important to me. This was a photo that I wanted to make sure I came in with when I moved to California 3 years ago. And I wanted to explain why I put this quote on this, right? Because leadership isn't about the accolades and awards. I love the post that someone put up last week about the different types of CISOs and the different types of leaders, and the ones who get the awards and the accolades, who are in the public. And I get great to get an award, great to be a public speaker, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, is what is the impact that you have on one person, one team, or one company's life, right? How did you help them develop into what they have grown to be. I have some incredibly beautiful people that were on my teams in the last decade or so who have far surpassed me, who are also doing their own speaking engagements and doing incredible things. And I thrive and love that, right? Leadership is not about the command and control. Leadership isn't about, being the best in the room. Leadership is about what is it that you're doing to pull together the teams that you have. Leadership is about being able to take what you've been given, develop that, and then just champion it as a team. You inspire and you motivate. That's your job. That's all day long, right? So you do that by finding budget, educating, resources, trying to pull things together. I love the book. I think it's the 5 dysfunctions of the team, or whatever it's called. I love the fact that they talk about your leadership team or your level being your number one team, right? That's great. And that's cute. And I get it, because that drives the mission and the vision and everything else. But my number one team every day is my team that reports into me, or anybody that wants to report into me, or anybody who's interested in anything that I do. Why? Because I need to make sure that they are enabled, empowered, energized, and motivated to do what they need to do. I need to shield them from the bullshit. I need to make sure that I find timely ways to explain certain things. And that's what a leader should be doing. So from a leadership standpoint, does not have to be somebody who reports into you, does not have to be the immediate reports, or even in the same company, right? It's how do you help and provide as much as you can. So leadership behaviors, I like actually talking about this. I'm just going to blow through these 3. I want you to go back the last 2 to 3 to 4 jobs that you've had, and then kind of categorize the kind of leader that you work for, right? Were they command and control and autocratic? Were they task-centric, and did they, bleed you to death with, the Gantt charts and deliverables and OKRs and KPIs, to death? Or were they people-centered, right? Yes, you need the other 2, right? At points, you do need somebody to say, nope, this is the decision we're going to make, and then we have to do it, and you have to suck it up. Sometimes you need somebody who's, or in a realm where it has to be task-based, because there's tons of dependencies and cross-functional teams and everything else. But at the end of the day, you have to lead by being people-centric. You cannot push teams to limits that they can't physically or mentally handle. You can't do that on a constant basis. You can't, there are going to be surges, there are going to be issues, but if you're constantly at that point, something has to change, right? So as a leader, you have to be extremely mindful of where you're putting most of your time and your effort and your style. And if it's on both of the flanking sides, left and right, and that's where you spend most of your time, you're going to create either the most resilient, incredible drones and robots on the planet that'll answer to whatever you can, or just really exhausted, pissed off people who are going to leave your team, which we've seen that migration happening in the last 3 to 4 or 5 years. The Great Resignation, part 2, part 4, part 18 of what's happening, right? Because people aren't going to take the same levels of stress as they used to do that. Traits of a leader: self-confidence, intelligence, enthusiasm, honesty, and integrity. Obviously, these are traits of a successful leader. Now, I want to make sure, and by the way, you're going to get these, so in case you need to revisit them, right? Characteristics are different than traits, right? You want to create a vision. You want to be able to look through with conviction, with power, with that reinforcement and that assessment to say, I'm going to block the noise, but I'm going to make sure that the team is really motivated. And you know what? It's exhausting. It's exhausting if you're trying to help somebody that isn't on your team or is in another company, and or they are your team. It's exhausting physically and mentally for you, because you have to be the rah, right? You have to be all right, here's what I'm thinking. Everybody pull together. Let's do what we need to do, and then try to work through that. And it can be, but it can be a really powerful change agent for an organization if you're able to pull through and say, I need to focus on these skills that I'm not very good at, right? I tend to be very conventional and I follow the rules, and no, you know what? change it up, think differently, right? Try to push yourself as you go through these levels. I created a ton of articles about 3.5 years ago, or 3 years, 3.5 years ago, which I call the Mentoring 101 series. It's on how to build out your connections, how giving and volunteering, right? The changing your perspective and your focus on learning. This article has 5 sections. It should have been 5 articles, but the learning article itself has 5 sections in there. There's also a spreadsheet to all kinds of topics, but a whole other tab on cybersecurity training. These are the kind of things that you can provide your teams for all the other skills, right? Some folks may need project management skills. Some folks, and you mentioned Toastmasters, fantastic, right? I can't tell you how many times I've mentioned Toastmasters to my teams. Not many have taken me up on it, but having been at Toastmasters in 3 different companies, phenomenal. These are books that I've read, and I will say from a leadership standpoint, are phenomenal books. Truth in the Trenches, and there's another Truth, and I have it at home. And you know, these books showcase how other leaders have led through what they've done. I will tell you right now, the language of leadership, which I have right here, is literally one of the shortest, best, sweetest examples of how to change your tone and how to actually address things. So Thero, when you said, well, how do I address, leadership, or how do I sound strategic, or how do I take it from a tactic? That book right there has incredibly great examples. Why did I include Loonshots, Range, and CEO Excellence? Loonshots talks about the idea, the vision, and entrepreneurial portions of things, and Range talks about how we learn in the different formats. And this is where I've talked about in our interview, Chris, earlier, was, you've got your idea of, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours and and then you talk about Range, where you get exposure to all the domains, and then you find which one you like, and then you still stay learning on all the other domains, like in cybersecurity, and you're better off understanding more of the business, more of your current role, and more of the other components, and you're going to be better off to take the next leap. But if you just focus on being one of those experts in one domain, and you don't get exposure, you don't continue to learn, it's going to be harder for you to get your career elevated. And CEO Excellence, I have to say, these are, I think, former McKinsey folks or current McKinsey folks. CEO Excellence gives you a great view into some of the most challenging global large-scale company decisions that had to be made and how they did it. And it actually ties in a lot of the management and team components of what the CEO and the board level folks had to do in order to drive the vision for a company. Now, why is that important to cybersecurity? Why is that important to IT or otherwise? Well, you need to understand the kind of challenges that a CEO or a company needs to make, because you need to put yourself in their shoes when you're trying to explain to them what a risk is and why are you spending millions of dollars in XYZ. So by understanding the scope of who your audience, you're actually going to level yourself up in the level of decisions that need to be made. All right. Any questions on this one? I think we're in the home stretch here, folks. All right. I'm going to pause for another 2 seconds. All right. We're going to keep going. Enable learning. I mean, come on. If you don't do this, shame on you. Everyone here has to probably put time into getting their CPE, CDEs, and everything else. Everyone here probably has to is either going for Network Plus, Security Plus, CISB, CCSK, or some other certification, right? What you do, if you're not doing that, what you need to do is you need to do the time blocking, and you need to manage what the expectations are for the workload. If you are beyond capacity, well, guess what? You've got to push back. You've got to cut deliverables. You've got to say, this cannot be done with the current resources and time, right? You have to be the one that communicates up, that says, you've asked us to do 10 things with our current resources at high capacity. We can get 3 done. So which of the 7 do you want us to stop? right? That is your job as a leader, as a coordinator, as a friend, or otherwise to help identify that and push that. We cannot continue to be at that level of constantly delivering on a regular basis. There has to be a lull. In cybersecurity, you're always going to have spikes, but you cannot be at that spike level as a normalized level because it gets only worse after that. And it's the only way that you're going to be able to retain talent is by not just blocking, but also really enabling the learning. Where is it that you can actually give people the opportunity to learn? Is it hands-on within the org? Is it actual paid training? Is it part of the curriculum that your company offers? Is it your own list, like the list that I'll share, the spreadsheet that I'll share that has a ton of different resources online, and really being able to create something internally as well, right? Knowledge transfer type of thing, like I mentioned earlier. If you don't enable learning, people are going to get bored. They're going to get complacent in their job, or they're going to find something else to do because they're not getting elevated or exposure. You're either going to leave, or you're just going to get a drone, right? That does the same thing over and over and over again. Okay. Investing in training does not have to be dollars, but it can be time. So please, please, please do that and make it purposeful. Mentoring and coaching all day long, right? Your one-on-one with your directs should not be about project status updates. Right. That's what the team meetings are for. That's what your scrum calls are for. That's what your one-on-ones is. Hey, what are your wins? What are you looking to learn? What are you doing personally, professionally? How can I enable that? Any struggles internally? Is it communications? Is it this, right? So mentoring and coaching is something you can also do outside of your team. But to me, I look at everyone in my team as I cannot just hit them up for, hey, what's, where are we at with the XYZ merger, or where are we at with this, that, and the other, because I can get that anywhere, right? I can get that through a spreadsheet. I can get that through an email. I can get that through Slack, right? I can get a status, but it's the only time you're going to have one-on-one time with me. And I want to make it powerful and useful and motivate them and get them to think outside the box and say, get off your ass. You haven't been following up on your Security Plus. What's going on? Right? I had some, things I need to deal with my family. You don't have to get into details, right? You don't have to be their therapist. You don't have to be their priest, but understand where they're at so that you can understand how to tailor what you need to do. I like I mentioned, the 5 dysfunctions of the team. I included the same links in the interesting link because it does have a carryover. I will tell you right now, the last 3 links are probably some of the most powerful books that I've read pretty much ever. So the 5 dysfunctions of a team is actually really good to get you into a good leadership mindset. Never Split the Difference is a book that I recommend to literally everyone on the planet because it helps you understand how you can change the tone of how you gather requirements, how you can negotiate, how you can do a lot of things. And Chris Voss is a phenomenal former FBI hostage negotiator, also created a lot of the best practices for the Quantico BAU, Behavioral Analysis Unit. So might learn a little bit of something from him. Atomic Habits, right? Fantastic book, hard to implement, but if you can, you've got a really great approach to being able to create a method for you to change your behavior and your habits. And if you're technical and you're in cybersecurity, you may not have complete exposure to business per se, and you don't have the time to get your MBA. Personal MBA is actually pretty damn good. I've had a ton of exposure in accounting and business and everything else. It really covers a ton of great topics. So if from a growth standpoint, you understand marketing and this and that, you don't have to go too far, just read the personal MBA. And with that said, I will recap these wonderful things. And again, I'm just going to include them here just because you're going to get them afterward, right? You have to be a listener. You have to show that you care. You have to create a vision. You've got to really be able to understand how it's impacting your teams, communicating, everyone, not just your team, your colleagues outside of your function, build out that trust. The limiting beliefs piece, which goes into that internal focus, is a massive one that I hear a lot of people talk about, or that I talk to a lot of people about when I say, wait, stop saying that because you can do this. So limiting beliefs is a whole other topic, but I included it here. Build out your teams, build out your skills, and just work every day to try to get through these things. With that said, my tagline: yes, hope is not a security or leadership strategy. So I am excited and hope that you're able to take these 5 areas, apply the ones that you enforce, the ones you already do, and apply the ones that you may have learned about. The links and the books are, and I have about 140 other books I could recommend that I've read over the last 3 to 4 years. Honored to be here and honored to see how I could help anybody on this call or in the Blue Lava community.
Well, Mel, thank you so much for everything. Outside of the community platform, how can any of our audience get in touch with you after today's show?
You may find me on LinkedIn. If you're looking for somebody that, just look for the thinker is one way you could look at it, or the snarky, disgruntled old guy picture, which will be my headshot. I don't do most of the other social media pieces, but if you're struggling, if you're in a toxic environment, if you're out of work, definitely reach out. I'll set up some time to see how I can help you. Obviously, Blue Lava community. There's the CISO exec community and a bunch of others. You could always join me to help support some of the nonprofits that I support, Gracie, Tech Impact, and a few others. But the most important thing for me is to make sure that everyone knows I'm going to be as available as possible. May not be there the whole time, but please do reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's build out a relationship.
Thank you.